little bit more perspective then on this, as of course we are still headed towards that conversation on picking a new top six then for the EFF. So some perspective is necessary. Political analyst Dr Ebrahim Harvey is joining us now to get just a sense of his thoughts from what has been put forward. I mean, the ultimate aim here, Dr. Harvey, would still be to try and cement his leadership hold, as it were. Is that continuing to be the case, I suppose, right now?
Yes, hi, thanks. Good to be with you. No, definitely. You see, cementing his leadership and increasing the hold he has on the EFF is critical to navigating very choppy waters, you know. I think part of the problem, however, is that he doesn't realize, you know, that in fact, the very title of Commander-in-Chief smacks of authoritarianism. If you look at it, you know, I don't know of any other political party in the world, president, yes, but Commander-in-Chief in this day and age, it smacks of authoritarianism. But he's definitely concerned. You can see Malema's body language and the EFF delegates, they're very concerned about this particular conjuncture and how after the 29th May elections, they've been supplanted as by the MK party, you know, as the third, now it's the fourth biggest party. MK is now the third biggest party. So Malema and the EFF has huge challenges, and I think what is going to make dealing with this crisis much more difficult and intractable is, in fact, we've never had something like this. The townships, I mean, Joburg, no water today. The townships are exploding. I mean, basic services is a total mess. Johannesburg, the city, except for Cape Town to a large extent, is collapsing. We have the biggest infrastructural crisis in this country. So, you know, the EFF, if it wants to chart its way forward and enable a resurrection of the former glory, you know, which was diminished considerably by the 29th May election results. They lost over 1%, you know, in electoral terms, massive support. They're going to need to really get to grips, which is what I think has been organizationally. You'll see they talk about the regions and the branches and so on. The EFF, I think, would have had considerably more political clout and influence in this country if they had dealt with the municipal crisis in the black townships. They hardly feature there. I don't know what their ward committees and stuff, you hardly see anything in the public media, print media especially, where the EFF has led or, you know, engaged in protests around a whole range of demands which are emerging, you know, in this municipal crisis in black townships in particular. But, you know, don't let the impression that he gives you, Malema and the EFF, cloud and obscure the fact that, you know, he generally comes across as overly confident, you know, and despite him denying it, really quite authoritarian. Look how he dealt with the media. Just listen carefully to how he dealt with some of the very legitimate questions coming from the media. For example, on the absence of Ndlozi. I mean, this was the former spokesperson of the party, a senior leader, MP, etc. Just look how dismissive Malema was in fielding that question from journalists, and they had every right to pose that question because something is going on. You can see, you know, he's not there today. He hasn't been there for a whole lot of major meetings. So I think, you know, Ndlozi is on his way out, to be honest with you. I think something's happening and Malema and them don't want to be clear about it. But I really foresee that him joining MK and throwing in his lot, don't forget he was close to Floyd Chavambu also. You know, there's definitely consternation, there's issues there, and I won't be surprised if in the new year, Ndlozi throws in his lot with the MK party. And it's the MK party, really, let me tell you, they've taken off. It's just been, you know, dramatic, the explosion of support. I mean, you can see how very well they've done in the 29th May elections. They're going to be, I really believe, you know, Malema is going to preside after this conference with a further decline of the EFF, despite all the plans and ambitions and attempts to resurrect it. Because I'll tell you what I think. I've mentioned this in several columns. I think Malema's part of the problem of the EFF, really. I think it smacks of highly authoritarian tendencies, and I think it alienated even ultimately Floyd Chavambu. He doesn't speak about it, but you must watch very carefully the media over the past decade and look at Floyd Chavambu and EFF. He's dominated everything. He's like that, and I think his title, Commander-in-Chief, smacks of that, and he seems to, express himself and handle himself in that highly authoritarian way. But look at how he dealt with the media. I mean, I was taken aback, honestly. And the journalists seemed like somewhat apologetic. They had every right to put that, and in fact, to put it more robustly, because Ndlozi's absence has been there for a while, a couple of months, if not, Yeah. And you'll see after the 29th May election, and when Floyd Chavambu moved over, Dali Mpofu, he's been there. And I really think, you're going to see Ndlozi move over to the MK party.
So is it time for new leadership at the EFF? I mean, that's pretty much what this is meant to do. But when I say leadership, I'm talking about the CIC himself, the man you're speaking of. Is it time for Julius Malema to actually be stepping aside as leader? Because he just seems a far more defensive figure, as you've made note of there, than the charismatic, forward-thinking, forward appraisal, and the leader who would have been dealing with issues, like you said, the municipal issues that the country is facing.
In fact, the irony of it all, I watched him very carefully. I listened to that ultra-marathon speech. To be honest with you, you know what? I mean, it depends. That speech, I could cut it down to an hour and retain all the essential points that he made. It was just far too long. I mean, I don't think we've ever had an electoral conference, any political leader giving, but highly defensive. Just watch him very carefully, even the way he fielded those questions from the journalists. He's become increasingly more defensive, and I think it's a reflection of the fact that the EFF is facing its biggest crisis ever. And I wish the party well, but I must tell you something. Malema has reinforced, in the News 24 column, I wrote quite a lot about them even recently. Malema is going to preside over a further decline in the electoral fortunes of the EFF. He's too defensive, he's too authoritarian. And you know what? If it could have happened, but who is there to contest him? I mean, he's the re-election as president, commander-in-chief of the EFF is a foregone conclusion. And in fact, if one looks at it, I argued in the News 24 column, he is probably, in terms of political experience, he is definitely the EFF leader with the most political experience. And you're going to need a lot of clout and experience to call upon to try to move the EFF forward, resuscitate and grow, hopefully. You're going to need that. So despite his weaknesses, I don't think there's another EFF leader at the moment, who could easily supplant Julius Malema. I don't think at this stage.
Yeah, but one could say that's probably or possibly the point then in a time like this, where you've just had an election, you have a ramp up, yes, to other elections coming through, but really if you aim hard to say that by the next national election, we would have galvanized and grown a leader who will ultimately lead this party forward from here. I mean, that's kind of the aim here. That should be what's happening. At the same time, he deflected from a question being asked about what type of a deputy president the EFF should have from here. And he gave a reasoning of saying, he doesn't want to characterize the next person who will then be DP. But what type of person should be his number two?
You know what he needs? And you won't easily find that in the EFF. To be honest with you, I think including Chavambu, and he couldn't take it. Malema's a highly authoritarian. I've been writing about this from the time that they were formed. Business Day, a whole lot of, because I seen this authoritarianism of Malema early on already. And really, you don't need that. You need a counterweight, an effective counterbalance and counterweight to that. You need a deputy president who can also call him to order, who can assert himself in relation to Malema. And you know what? I think even the current general secretary maybe comes closest to that person, to be honest with you. But the EFF, Floyd Chavambu was, somebody who could stand toe-to-toe with Malema, and certainly in theoretical matters, I think was superior to Malema, But, you're right, because, properly speaking, ideally speaking, which is not what's going to happen, the elected president of the EFF at this conference should have been somebody else. But, somebody strong who could have driven and led the EFF into, which is likely to be a very stormy, troubled period ahead. If you look at South African politics and the global situation, for the ANC itself and the government of national, you've got a very stormy period coming, to be honest with you. And it's in that context that the EFF is trying to get its act together and recover considerably lost ground in that election of 29th May. And what is even probably worse, let me tell you, a lot of analysts don't probe and go into this. It's not just the loss of over 1%. It's what happened subsequent to those election results. Floyd Shivambu left, Dali Mpofu left, other people, councillors, not just the top brass. You can see a number of people at lower level also gravitated. They moved over to the... So that's the massive blow. That is probably, let me tell you, on par with, if not even bigger than the decline of 1% electoral support on the 29th of May.
Yeah. Doctor, thank you so much for the time. Look, one might ask these questions and we'll continue to see. I mean, your note being said there that, will he preside over a decline in the EFF now? I guess the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Political analyst there, joining us post, of course, the economic freedom fighter, CIC, Julius Malema, speaking